Hello, Gary Williams here. Welcome, everybody, to COVID Conversations. We are live on Facebook and on YouTube, and I'm so excited to be joined by two wonderful people in my life. And now here they are, live and in person with me, Jon Nickoll and AJ Casey. Hello, both of you. How are you?
Hey, we're good.
This is quite exciting. I don't know about you, but seeing that countdown there, it was like I was getting those slight sort of butterfly things, almost like we were going to be doing a gig. It's a long time since I felt like that.
I felt like I was at my own. It's like it had almost like a crematorium vibe.
It did have that. It was the crematorium music. Let's hope it's not like that. Listen, I'm quite excited to talk to you about this. Both of you have incredible, stellar careers. AJ, you have spent most of your adult life performing in West End shows, doing a lot of lead roles, a bit of TV, concerts. I mean, you have spent most of your life with people telling you how wonderful and amazing you are. What is it like now when really no one's giving you a round of applause just every night? How are you coping?
It is a little strange. We were just chatting before we came on air about it, and we kind of joke, all performers, they want to have a round of applause. They do. That's why we do it. Otherwise, you'd go and you wouldn't bother. And I think it stems from being a small child. You're the show off at a family gathering. I'll do a song. I'll do something. So I'm still doing it. I'm just doing it in my kitchen to my children and my cats and my husband. I think they're a bit bored of it now.
What about you, Jon?
Yeah, it is strange. I've been thinking about it a lot during lockdown, obviously, and you realise how privileged anyone in our kind of industry is, because people always, even if you're not getting people kind of screaming and ranting, raving, people often do say nice things to you, and that just doesn't, you don't often, you don't have somebody come up to you on the school run and saying, I must say, you really delivered your child with beautiful aplomb just then, or I really like the way you parked then, And so it is weird. And I think I've taken it for granted, people saying, oh, I really enjoy, obviously a bit different to AJ and you, Gary. I'm not often doing a big show on stage. I might just be, playing piano in a room, which can be quite an ambient background thing. But people still, maybe, 10 to 15 people a night would say, oh, really enjoy your music tonight, or whatever. And you just don't get that response anymore, or very rarely. And so, yeah, there's a big pressure drop, I guess.
But and I mean, does it, AJ, you said, it's why. Is it really why you do it, for the applause?
No, I mean, not wholly and completely. It's on a nice pie chart. Both Jon and I have been homeschooling. We've just been talking about Archie. If we were to pie chart this, how much
I do like pie.
How much of my pie chart is literally just so people will go, oh my God, you're really good. It's not even half. It's fulfillment of yourself. It's in you. It's what you're meant to do. It's your vocation. I've always been singing, dancing, jumping into splits, showing off. I'm nearly 50 now and I'm still doing it. I'm still going in the kitchen and singing away. So it's not wholly for the response from somebody else, but it is a big part of it. I mean, there's nothing better. You see people, there's lots of those shows, X Factor, Britain's Got Talent, all of those things. And, oh, I'm just a plumber from Billericay. And suddenly they get a round of applause and they're thrilled with themselves because, like Jon said, if you work in a bank, people don't go, oh my God, that was the best £10 you ever issued me. Or, I've spent most of 2020 being a delivery driver. My husband and I, we had to take another job. We've been delivery driving and, for various companies. And most people do not say, thank you so much for delivering me this parcel. Usually they're going, well, you're late, you're 10 minutes late. So yeah. The real world is a very different place than showbiz world, and I'm sure Jon and you, Gary, we've missed it dreadfully.
AJ, did you, when you've been doing, sorry, that's a quick question to AJ, when you've been doing the delivery stuff, have you felt compelled to tell people a lot what you really do? Because I've been thinking about that. I feel like I have to I feel like I have to keep kind of saying, oh, this isn't what I really do. Have you been doing that, or have you? Yeah.
No, the weird thing was that the managers of the depot where, I mean, my husband's a performer as well, and we were both working out of Maidstone, the lovely Maidstone depot.
Yeah.
And the people who hired us, the lovely two ladies who hired us, they found out. Somebody had said, oh, she's an actor and he's an actor. And then somebody went home and Googled it. And that's the worst thing, isn't it? Because then all your YouTube videos come up. And then there's AJ, in a skimpy outfit singing at the proms. And they're like, oh, my God, you do that for a living. That's what you really do. And they start stalking you. And then you just think, I just want to get on with my job and go home.
But do you really? I mean, is that the worst thing? I mean, is it not nice for you then to, to feel just that little bit more special when they know what you do and you walk in the next day with your list and getting your parcels, and you just feel you're getting that little bit of extra respect because, like Jon says, this isn't what I really do. I mean, is it not nice?
No. The 50 or 60 people who were in the warehouse that I was in, out of those 50 or 60, there were probably 3 nice souls out there. Right. And those people were very kind. But the rest of them, I mean, it's a hard job. Like I say, in the normal world, the real world is really, really hard compared to what showbiz land is. And those people are just getting on with their jobs. They don't want to know that woman over there might have been singing with Brian May last week, or she's close personal friends with Seth MacFarlane and Curtis Stigers. They don't give a tiny rat's ass. And
doesn't it surprise you? I mean, quite seriously, doesn't it surprise you that, when they know what you're doing, that, at least a few of them are interested in sitting down and say, what's Brian May like? What's it like singing at the Albert Hall? Does it surprise you that most people, it seems, don't really give a shit?
Good night. Goodbye.
Yeah, try. I think it becomes for those people. For me, it became I didn't want to feel like this is below me what I'm having to do, because my lord, that pretty much a year, the whole of 2020, it saved. I didn't have to move out of my beautiful house. I fed my children. I wasn't scrimping off the state. I was doing what I needed to do to get by, because the state wasn't offering me anything. So we did what we did. But a lot of people in there, I think they were like, oh, does she think she's better than us? And my lord, I would not want anyone to think that, just because of what you do. And Gary, so many famous people in inverted commas.
Well, you two, that's it. To be honest, it's rubbish.
You don't want it to be like one of those awkward moments where, who do you think you are? Because you.
Yeah, but to be fair, AJ, you was turning up to work in a sequined onesie and a feather boa. I mean, you were asking. Jon, I mean, it's interesting in our business. I don't know if it's more so for you and I than AJ, because AJ, you're generally in production shows where I guess sort of things are taken care of more for you. I don't know if that's true or not, but certainly for Jon and I, as we're sort of a little bit more self-contained solo performers, we sort of spend a lot of time, creating an image, fashioning an image, for ourselves and a brand, if you like. And Jon, it's got to be quite difficult if it comes to getting an ordinary job. If you show up at somebody's door with a parcel in your hand, or you're driving an Uber and somebody gets in your car that perhaps, a year ago gave you a big tip at the Savoy when you were playing, Moonlight in Vermont, and suddenly you're driving a car for them. It's sort of not really on brand, right? I mean, it's not really what we want to be doing. Really, is it? I mean, it's awkward, isn't it?
It's weird, isn't it? Because I think so much at the risk of sounding like an absolute wanker. A lot of the kind of doing being a performer in it, or an artist, or anything creative. A lot of it is kind of delusionary self-image that gets you there in the first place, isn't it? You're a 5 or 6 year old kid, as AJ was saying, and you just think, I want to be that person. You see someone doing it on TV and you think, I want to do that. I will do that. I am now someone who does that, and it really is that simple. You are then that person who stands up with their guitar and sings or whatever, it's quite a simple decision, but it's insane self-belief to get to that stage. And I think you're right. I think when suddenly you're at a period when actually you forcibly are not or cannot do that thing, it's a real, I think I'm really in awe of how AJ's just got on with that. I wonder if it helps as well because her husband's been in exactly the same boat, and I guess you've kind of shivered yourself along in a way. Because I think I haven't done anything else work-wise. Luckily, my wife's a freelancer; she's in book publishing, and so I haven't had to do anything work-wise.
But would you consider, Jon, anything? Would you consider delivering Amazon packages?
Well, I did.
Would you consider it beneath you?
Well, strange enough, so basically, obviously, financially, it's been devastating this last year, and I have been furloughed to a small degree, so that's really helped. and a few other bits and pieces that have been going on. But I did look into doing some delivery work, like for like I told you about it at the time, Gary, didn't I? It was Yodel? That's right, Yodel. Yeah,
not singing related. I could
Christ,
do that.
no.
I could do that.
Yeah.
That's right. Turn up for the interview in Lederhosen.
That's strictly in our personal time. But I went as far, I almost, this is going to sound pathetic, but I had an interview, like, because AJ, I live in Ramsgate, so I'm not a million miles away from Maidstone. Yeah,
road, my love.
Yeah, and so I'd kind of set up a very a kind of a phone interview with someone to do a Yodel delivery job about 6 months ago, and I found it really I found the whole thing incredibly uncomfortable, and I told this 16-year-old girl on the phone about 3 times that I was a musician, and wasn't expecting to be doing this for very long. And then, but anyway, so I really
not what you normally would say when you're trying to get a job, John.
No.
Just
I know.
Word to the wise.
And I really did, the whole thing was really uncomfortable. Then I kind of did a little breakdown and worked out actually what I'd be earning kind of per parcel, and it was absurd, because you're self-employed in that particular racket, and after you kind of paid petrol and stuff, you're literally earning. You'd be lucky to be earning about 14-15 quid a day.
But this is what you're talking about, AJ. That it's the real world is really, really hard, and we are so spoiled. We are so lucky. I mean, this is one thing that I've really taken away. I mean, of course, we all know, don't we? We know that we're so lucky to be doing this, and we've always been aware that we're lucky and very privileged to be able to do what we do. But this has really, like, firmly underlined it, hasn't it? And how hard we're having to work to earn anything like the money that we used to earn in the real world. I mean, it's I think one of the good things to come out of this must be that it's made every single entertainer all over the world, every single performer, much more humble and respectful for the ordinary jobs that everybody else is doing, right?
Absolutely. I mean, like John said, we worked for a company that was an offshoot of Hermes, the famous delivery company, who have such a bad rap. And I now have to say, when you get those awful, Watchdog or those programs, they go, my Hermes driver just threw it over the fence and ran off. Do you know how many that poor man has got in the back of his van, or that poor woman? At the end, we finished, Graham and I were, Graham's mum, God bless her heart, she passed away about 5 years ago, and she had a property in France. Thankfully, it got sold. So on December the 17th, when I had, are you ready? 262 parcels to deliver that day.
Oh, blimey.
In a day?
In a day. That was getting to a normal day. 262. I came home on December the 17th, exhausted, crying, covered in muck, freezing cold. It's pitch black. I'm like, I could, hideous. And Graham said to me, we don't have to do it anymore. The money's come through from my mum. So thank you, Lord.
Wow.
But,
yeah.
And so when you're rude about your Hermes or your Amazon driver or whoever, they've got another 200 and odd in the back of that van. They've got them done. And so I can kind of understand why they are flinging them over hedges. If you're not in, they just need to get rid of it and get on to the next one. But you're absolutely right. £1 a parcel at the end of the day. So 262 quid, that's not a bad day's work, but it is about a 14-hour day. So
do you think we need, to do what we do you think we've all got a bit of an ego? I mean, to perform, to get on stage and perform to other people, do you think, our egos can get a little bit out of control in normal times?
John, what do you think?
I'm not able to get. I think on my own, I think I'm probably a bit self-obsessed, and I know that overall, for me, it's kind of like an OCD thing. I'm very for me, it translates into just being very controlling and obsessive about the details that anybody else of a gig would be. Like my wife, for instance, is just always incredulous about how early I'm leaving for events. I'm often 3 hours early and all that. So that's an ego obsession translates into wanting it to be right in that respect. But I think certainly with my wife and kids, there's no room for me to be an egomaniac at home, because number one, no one would listen. Number two, I'd be held in more contempt
but
than I already am.
We're spending. I don't know about for you, AJ. Again, maybe slightly different, but for John and I, being kind of a bit more self-contained brands, if you like, it's so easy for us to spend all day, just on photographs of ourselves and recording ourselves and images of ourselves and this and that and the website and the post, and and it's just like me all day. Because it's kind of what you have to do, right? It's all right having the talent, but then it needs to be sold. And as much as we all can't stand social media, we have to be a part of it, right? And so it's kind of easy, I think, for us to get a little self-obsessed. Do you feel that, AJ, yourself, or do you feel you're immune from that?
Even before 2020 and the COVID pandemic happened, a lot of auditions were switching to self-tape. So, you set up, like I've got here, I've got my phone's here, and I've got my little tripod thing, and you've got your little Bluetooth zapper that you can record, and you go and you sing into it. But then afterwards, of course, before you send it off to the casting director or back to your agent, so they can then splice it together with, your header, Anna Jane Casey represented by, you end up looking at the bloody things for hours going, oh, my face, I look terrible. I should have done a better angle here. When realistically, you can't do that, because if you did that so much, you would go insane, because what other people see and what you see is a very different thing.
Yeah,
and you saying, Gary and John, if you're looking at pictures of yourself, I bet you're actually not going, oh God, I look 10 years older than I did the other day. You're going, will this fit the show that I'm giving? If it's a Frank Sinatra show, if it's a crooner show, if you're playing tonight, you're going to play versions of Rachmaninoff, you're going to jazz up some Rachmaninoff. You're not thinking, well, if I turn my face this way, it would embody the song more. You become a business, because you have to, otherwise you would drive yourself bonkers. So there is a little ego, but of course you've got to be able to cut that off, because you would go bananas.
And I think in your defense, Gary, and in all of our, I think providing there's actually stuff that you're doing, you're working on projects, that's kind of fine. I think the issue can be, and I do see, I'm in my early 40s now, very early 40s, I hasten to add.
You look 17, Angel, 17.
When I was 70. I think with if you look at kind of glance at Instagram, I think just the never-ending stream of mugshots without any story or context, that is the kind of the road to insanity, isn't it? But I think what you're talking about, and you do this and I do that, and I think AJ, as you say, AJ is probably more often than not in the embodied in a production, but there's always a project or a reason why you're posting something on social media. It's because you're pimping out a new radio show, or you're pimping out a new CD or whatever. I think if it was literally just here, a study of me in blue on a Wednesday morning, drinking orange juice, it would be like, for Christ's sake, But there's always, as you say, basically we're having to manage ourselves these days. If we were successful in the 60s and 70s, you might have a press agent and someone who'd do all that stuff for you. But we're all basically a 5-strong team: press, management, blah, 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 guru, doing all that stuff ourselves, So
it's always seemed to me there's this odd paradox as entertainers that, if we, particularly in the UK, but I think everywhere, if we come over as a bit big-headed, a bit self-obsessed, it's the biggest turn-off, right? To anybody, even in any social situation, but particularly when you're performing. And if people, I've seen performers myself, and you think, oh, they look a bit full of themselves. It's such a turn-off, right?
Yeah.
And yet we sort of have to be, really, because we've got to have a tremendous amount of self-confidence and belief that we're all right at what we're doing, or that we're very good at what we're doing, because we wouldn't dare. People say to me, or people have said to me in the past, oh, I don't know how you dare get up there and sing all those songs. I think, well, yeah, but if I sounded like you, I wouldn't. It's right. You've got to have something to offer. And so we have to have this self-belief. And yet we know that we have to kind of keep that under wraps, because nobody wants to know, right?
Yeah.
AJ?
Yeah. There's a funny one that I'm going to pick up slightly on what John said about social media, how at the moment you pimp yourself out, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. Did you know that a lot of casting directors, not only in the West End, but to do with any TV stuff and theatres all around the world, they will now look at your CV and you go, right, you've done this show, that show, you work with this person. how many followers have they got on Instagram or Twitter? And that will dictate you get a recall to the next stage, which is like, what? But then again, I can understand it. I've done the show Chicago for a long time. I played in the show for over a period of 9 years. Not 9 years completely. It was like, you know, a year at a time or 6 months here and there. And the producers of that show, very, very cleverly, because it's the story of the show as well, it's about celebrity. So they would come over to England and they would open Heat magazine and say, right, who's in Heat magazine this week? Who's the face of, you know, oh, she's been caught at the shops with her knickers hanging out of the back of her trousers. They would call those people in because they know from a producing point of view, bums on seats matters. Now, Heat magazine and the like, or any of those shows, Love Island, Made in Chelsea, any of those kind of celebrity shows have a massive following. Now, if you're a producer and you want to fill a theatre and you've got Anna Jane Casey or that girl who won Love Island, who are the people going to go and see? You know, it's a really interesting one. So it's a very fine line between showing yourself off or being a Burke and being a Wally that nobody works with. Nobody needs that in their life.
How do you two deal with this whole sort of, you know, feelings of envy, I suppose, and jealousy? You know, it's quite a competitive world, and we're all perhaps a little bit insecure. And if we see particularly somebody we know well, one of our peers, one of our sort of equals, who, as we're slowly, hopefully coming out of this pandemic. I mean, at the moment, there's a great leveling thing, isn't there? Because nobody's got any work, right? So nobody feels bad that they haven't got anything. But once it starts happening again, you know, if our friends, the people around us start getting a few gigs and start getting busy and this and that, and we sort of start getting left behind, and if that should happen, and we see our friends doing things that we feel that perhaps we could be or should be doing, how do you cope with that, Jon?
Well, I've been in trouble with the law, haven't I, in the past, because I've got physically aggressive.
Yeah, but I dropped those charges. We don't talk about that.
Stop doing so much. No, I don't. I promise I'm not being coy or silly. I don't have a problem with jealousy. I'm always really, really interested in what other people are doing, and I have certain people who I on my kind of radar who I think rude things about, but I don't. And I might be a little bit competitive, and I think, oh, that's a bit crap. You know, oh, I'd never do that. Oh, that's dreadful. I'd never do that. But I don't turn too inwardly about it and punish myself. I guess I just kind of. I kind of look at myself and think I can, or I wouldn't do that, or think what I can do that would be better. But I'm not riddled with.
And it's as simple as that. Yeah.
Yeah, you know.
You feel sorry for them, actually, that they have to do it when you could have done a much better job.
If I had that budget, oh yeah. But I think I have been quite sensitive during this period as well to not. I mean, there have been some people who have just kind of carried on, you know, trumpeting amazing things that they're doing, and I think I've been quite sensitive about that, really, because I think we're all, you know, everyone's a bit freaked out and a bit not doing very much. So yeah, I've been careful not to just kind of, because I think the temptation is when there's not much going on, you can just flood the market with just stuff out of nothing, can't you? And I think keeping a sense of genuine project is really, really important, so that you're not kind of oversaturating your little world with whatever you're doing. So just if you are doing something, it's something that kind of, you know, means something and is a genuine project. So that's how I've kind of kept myself.
It's a very diplomatic answer. I mean, AJ, how has it been for you over the years? I mean, it's only natural. It's only normal. One of my favorite sayings is comparison is the thief of joy. I mean, we can feel really happy about what, you know, we buy a new car and we think it's great, and then our next door neighbor gets the slightly better one than us, and we feel that ours is rubbish now, you know, and we can be ticking along quite happily. But when our peers start doing a bit better than us, surely it's difficult.
It is, but I've been doing a lot of, because there's been no work, I've been doing a lot of kind of online, I hate the word Zoom. Oh, we're all going to get Zoom hives, aren't we? Oh, if somebody mentions Zoom and I get a rash. But I've been doing a lot of those like master classes or personal classes with young kids, and I say to them, you know, children. When I say children, that sounds so rude and patronizing. I don't mean that. Young adults who are hoping to go into the business, and there's always those. You've done the class, and then there's the 10-minute Q&A at the end. What advice would you give me? And I say, don't compare yourself to others, because there's always going to be, especially in majority of the work I do is musical theatre. There's always going to be somebody who can sing a bit higher, is a little bit thinner, or is a little bit curvier, or has brown hair and you're a blonde, or has a big bum and you've got a little bum. And you just can't. All you have to do is go in and say, this is what I have. It's the best I can work with. This is what my voice does. This is what my legs and my body does. This is my acting style. These are the accents I can do. And if you like it, then have it. But if they don't like it, you can't then go, oh my God, it was because I didn't have the right hair. And because if you go that, you will go bananas. You will.
Yeah.
And you have to trust, just do that. And it sounds so naff. It sounds so Hallmark card and all those awful, like, you know, self-help book nonsense. And I don't mean it to sound like that, but be the best you that you can be.
But
and
you know, I think that's great advice actually for anybody, isn't it? I mean, it can be crippling. I mean, this is one of the problems with Facebook and Instagram, isn't it? It's this comparison thing, you know, regardless of whether you're in the entertainment business or not. You know, you see, you're having an okay day, and then you see one of your friends, you know, sitting by a beach having a cocktail, and you think, oh God, my life feels rubbish. But we just have to live the best lives that we can, right? And try and be happy in our own little worlds and not compare ourselves constantly.
There's that great Harold Arlen song. Do you know it, guys? Goose never be a peacock. Have you heard that one?
Oh yes,
no,
I do.
yeah. I don't know that. Tell me.
Well, the last line is I don't know it too well, but the last line is well, there never were too many fine birds sitting on the wall. Maybe you are the very best of you of all. It's exactly the sentiment that AJ was saying, that the moral of the song is that, you know, you have this goose comparing himself to a peacock and various other creatures, and it's a disaster. It's the road to ruin. But you are the best goose, you know, or you're a lovely goose anyway. And it's exactly what AJ was saying. It's really good, great advice there.
There's always great advice in the American Songbook. I'm seeing that there's a few people, Shane Hampshire, hello, Shane and Wendy Wood, and Paul, who's that? Paul Borges, and George Lyle. There's a few people. So if anybody has got a question,
I've got Barry Manilow. Was it?
No, I cut him off. He's always, you know, I blocked him. If anybody's got a question, anything that you would like to know from these two fine guests of mine, then let me know, and I will try and put it to them. You know, when I first started working on, I'm gonna give you a very honest and quite an embarrassing. Oh, this is really embarrassing, actually. I'm probably going to regret doing this. But there's an interesting thing, isn't it, John? You said earlier on that, you know, oh, it's, you know, when I perform at the Savoy, it's not a sort of grand, you know, it's as what you two are doing in theatres and what. But actually, I think the immediacy of a person right there in front of you, coming up to you and saying thank you, can actually be more impactful and more meaningful than a theatre full of, you know, 1,000, 2,000 people applauding. I found this when I first started doing ships. I found it took me a long time to get used to it, and now I am completely used to it, but it took me a long time to I'd be on stage, finish the show, hopefully if everything had gone right, I'd stand up, you'd have this room full of people, whoa, fantastic, lots of applause. And then literally within 5 minutes, I'd be back in my room. You know, I'd walk off stage, go backstage, you know, through the crew areas, and I'd be in my room. And then literally, I mean, it would be 3 minutes, having had a standing ovation. I'd be on my own, sitting on my bed in the room. It'd be like from 100 to 0. And I'd be like, I don't know what to do now. You know, get a bit of room service, watch a bit of telly. I found it very strange. And even though there'd been all of this applause, it sort of didn't matter. So what I used to do was,
I'm not sure you want to hear this story, Gary.
No. So it's before I got back to my room. What I used to do, I'd get off stage and I'd go running around so that I'd be standing by the doors as people were exiting. And I'd be like pretending like I needed to get into the theatre So I'd be like going against the stream. And of course, people would see me and oh, it's you. Oh, you are fantastic. Blah, 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 blah. Can we take a photograph? And I'd be like, oh, yes. I need to go. Oh, okay. And I'd sort of be, sort of stuck in the crowd, getting all of this attention for, 5-10 minutes. And then they'd all go. And then I'd go back to my room and I felt all right. And I always thought this was a really strange thing that I needed to do that. I don't know if have you seen a film called Soap Dish?
Yes, it's one of my favorites.
One of my favorite films. So, have you seen it, John?
No.
It's a great film. You should watch it. Whoopi Goldberg plays the sort of PA, the writer, the friend of Sally Field, who's this famous but aging American soap star, and she's a little bit insecure. Whenever she's having a bad day, she sort of knowingly nods to Whoopi Goldberg, like, "Let's go to the mall." And "let's go to the mall" means that they're sort of going down an escalator together, and Whoopi Goldberg pretends she doesn't know Sally Fields and suddenly starts going hysterical that the great Sally Field, this actress from the soap opera, is there, and Sally Field pretends that she's shocked, and before we know it, everybody in the mall is coming around her, getting her autograph and taking it, and she suddenly feels a lot better about it. So my ex, Mark Norris, when I used to tell him about this cruise ship thing of mine, he used to say, we used to call it getting my soap for Soap Dish. So did you get your soap tonight? I say, yeah, and I'd be a bit embarrassed. But AJ, I mean, can you relate to this at all, or is this just me?
Absolutely. And do you know what? I'm going to turn this on its head, because I always try and see the best in everything. That wasn't just you getting your ego boost. That was the people who've enjoyed your work going, thank you. Because I'm sure they, as much as you go, oh, that was great, thanks everyone. Seriously.
I was doing it for them. You're right. I did it for them. Bless their heart.
A bit of everything. You're doing it for you. Let's not be silly about it. We all do it, which is why we go, like me, on a stage. But also, you made their night. They've gone home and gone, we met that singer and wasn't he brilliant? Because you are brilliant. I'm just going to blow your trumpet for a minute. Is that something you were doing in your hotel room? I don't know. But you don't just say how brilliant you are, and you deserve to have let people have that moment with you. But you're right. We laugh about that film Soap Dish, which is so brilliant. If anybody hasn't seen it, have a look at it. And there is something in that ego. We all like to be liked. Everybody does. Yeah. Even from, I don't mean to sound dismissive, somebody who's going to clean the toilets to the CEO of the company. Everybody wants to know that the job that they did was the best that they can do. And listen, if you got a great a great feeling out of it, so did the other people. And, that's not beyond the realms of concept. I've done that. Of course I have. You go out the stage door. There are times when I was in Chicago and, you'd have, when I was, I don't know, Denise Van Outen or Kelly Osbourne was in the show with me for a while. It's like Marty Pello, some really famous people. And you'd think, I'll just put my head down and go out. No, do you know what? You're cheating your audience out of their little moment of, oh my God, you were great. Can I have your autograph? Thanks very much. Then they might turn around the corner and go, oh, she was rubbish. Whatever. For those 2 minutes, everybody felt great. And let's face it,
it's true.
The world is a crappy old place. We need to feel good.
This is true. Did it ever take you? It took me quite a long. This is another sort of strange thing to say, but I think it's important when people say to you, "Oh, you did a great job." It's important to be able to say thank you, isn't it? Because for years, this sort of, I don't know, partly embarrassment or not wanting to seem big-headed. When anybody would pay me a compliment, I'd always say, "Oh, go on. What are you talking about? No." And it took me years to realize that's an awful thing to say to somebody when they pay you a compliment. John?
Well, we've talked about this before many times. I think I bet AJ can relate to this too. But isn't it amazing how you fixate and remember the one slightly negative comment that you might get a month or something, and without being blasé about it, you enjoy it and acknowledge nice things, but they don't stay in your brain like the unpleasant comments. So I can remember probably really vividly 3 or 4 really unpleasant things over 20 years. Well, God, there must be loads more. But you remember,
I've given you at least 3 or 4. At least.
Well, they're all from you, yeah. But you do remember the crappy negative comments far more than the zillions of really nice things, or just even pleasant things that people say. And I think that's an insight into not just a performer's ego, but also human nature. I guess, from an evolutionary point of view, I guess that somebody somewhere thinks there's more value. You learn more from something that's vaguely threatening or negative than good stuff. Good stuff is like, oh, whatever. But the danger lurks in nasty things, I suppose, or unpleasant things. I don't know what it is, but isn't that crazy? Yeah, you nice things just kind of like drift over you. But Oh, you know,
it's completely disproportionate. You're right.
Yeah.
You know, another thing that I've been actually done for many years to try and keep my ego in check is in my house. I actually have no. If you came into my house, you wouldn't know what I did for a living. Like, there's no pictures of me or no posters of any shows I've been in. There's nothing that you would never guess what I did for a living. And I it's a conscious, because I've got some lovely posters from shows and stuff that they have happy memories and stuff. But I think to myself, I spend far too much time looking at myself and thinking about myself as it is. I really don't need it to be on my walls. Are there any things which you do, AJ, to try and keep it in check, or does your husband and your kids do that for you?
I think, the kids do it for us, really. I've recently, thank you, Jesus, and thank you, Mother Nature, and whoever the universe, that over the last couple of weeks, in fact, it finishes on Sunday, if anybody wants to have a look, at Sheffield Theatres. I've worked a lot at the Sheffield Crucible. It's a brilliant place to work as a theatre producing house. And we just did a show that was, that we couldn't have an audience in, so they filmed it and they've streamed it. It finishes on Monday. It's called The Band Plays On. Anyway. So our opening night, if you will, was not Monday just gone, the one before. And so they had a live, we'd filmed it, they'd edited it all together, and we had like a live showing. So people who wanted to buy the ticket after the show, they could speak to us. So there's 5 ladies in the show. So 5 women, and we all sat on Zoom. I'm getting hives. We all sat on Zoom, and then we watched on our computers the show that we'd done. And my children were walking up and down. I'm fully dressed up. I've got full makeup on because it's an opening night, and I'm going to do a Zoom conversation.
Nice.
Got to get a lash and a lip on. And literally, I'm watching.
You didn't bother today, though, did you?
No, I thought I've been Ubering, love. I've had housework today, but I'm sat in the room. I'm singing a Jarvis Cocker song that he wrote for Nancy Sinatra. It's called "Don't Let Her Waste Your Time." I'm watching. I'm thinking, oh God, the lighting's great. I go, kids, come on. Come in. I've got a 14 and 8-year-old, 2 girls. The 14-year-old, because all teenagers hate their parents, she hates me, so she doesn't want to know. But the 8-year-old came in, looked at the screen and looked at me and went, that's not live because you're sitting there. I was like, okay, well, that's one thing. And then she went, I'm bored. And then she went, Gravity Falls is on, which is a hilarious TV show that she watches. I'm going now, Gravity Falls is on. So there was nobody going, oh, mummy, you were marvellous. And my poor husband then had to take the little one to bed, so he missed it. So I sat here on my own with the gin going, oh, I was quite good then. But your family keep you down.
It's true. What about you, John?
It was exactly the same. I've been, one thing that's really kept me busy is there's a radio station has launched in Ramsgate, and I've been doing a couple of shows on that a week, and that's kept me really sane and busy. But it's sometimes funny. I can't speak. I'm too tired. Bump into people on the street, and my wife will be with me, and they'll say, "Oh, really enjoying your radio show?" My wife's never heard any of them, because when she's not working, she doesn't want to sit and listen to me bloody talking for 2 hours on radio. It's her worst nightmare. But I do have.
Do you think? Does she not appreciate how remarkable you are?
No. Yeah, I mean, I think I think we're just too. we're all. I mean, Laura's, her argument would be she's a really, really great book publisher and food writer, and I don't. She doesn't come up to her office. I don't kind of gush over her the way she's edited the latest Pinch of Non book, and so I think it's quite nice when you're in a relationship when you're both quite busy, because you're not blasé or dismissive about each other's stuff, and the same with having kids, but you're kind of too busy to kind of blow smoke up each other's bums, really, aren't you? And I do have an ego room. I've got my music room at the top of the house, which has I chatted to you about this before, Gary. I remember you saying before that you don't have stuff, memorabilia and things on your walls. I don't have in the house, but I have one kind of music room where I have kind of work stuff on the walls, a few kind of posters, and not as much of myself, just things of interest that have happened in my career, I suppose. So that's my little ego cave, but I don't inflict it on the house. I wouldn't be allowed to. Yeah.
I think one thing's for sure, that when eventually we do get back to performing, I mean, we're going to be so happy, aren't we? I did this a live stream show a couple of days ago, whatever day it is now, on Sunday. And do you know what I realized is, and how what actually was quite surprisingly magical about this live stream show was the connectivity. I mean, that ultimately is what we are, communicators, aren't we? We do what we do, I think, to connect with people, whether that's by music or playing a piano or singing or by acting. We're connecting with people and feeling that sense, getting to feel that sense of connection. And I was quite surprised how, with Facebook and YouTube and people being able to comment and just be involved, there really felt like this sense of community, this sense of connection that you get almost the same as being in a live theatre situation. And that's certainly the thing which I miss most. It's that sense of just being in a room full of people and sort of making something happen, being a part of something, a shared experience. Do you know what I mean?
Definitely. This is the one thing that worries me, especially being a parent. The developments that will happen over the next few years because of this COVID thing. We've been told to, stay away, keep 2 meters away from people. So I'm a runner. I run a lot. I run a lot of marathons to get away from my children. No, it's not good. But at the moment I'm running. I live like John. I live in Kent, so we have lovely countryside. And I'll be running down a road and I see somebody come towards me and they'll move into the road, or they will ask me to move into the road. And I go, hang on a minute, as human beings, we are pack animals. We need to cling together. And that pulling apart, which of course we have to, because nobody wants to get sick or make anybody else sick. But it really does worry me that the repercussions of what will happen over the next 15, 20 years from all this, I've been away from somebody for a year. How are we going to feel? We're either gonna get into a room and just hug each other so tight that we'll never let go, and then that will be awkward. You'll be like, I don't really know you, but I'm hugging. Or there'll be a real distance.
I do that anyway, just to get them to buy a CD. I don't let them go until they've bought one.
I'm going to do a massive, ridiculous name drop now. That I was doing. There's another thing that's being streamed on Sunday, which is called Rise Up with Arts, which is some of the Strictly dancers have organised this amazing concert online, and the lovely Brian May is part of it. Now, Brian, well, we will not be embarrassed when I say this. He's of an age where he's actually had now 2 vaccines. He's had both his vaccines. I saw him. I've worked with Brian a fair bit. We had a record out earlier in 2020, which did very well.
Number 1, I believe.
It went to number 1 in the rock charts.
Wow.
What about I'm 49 years old and I was number 1 in the rock charts for 2 weeks?
I loved your post when you did that, because you'd had a horrible day delivering parcels. You got home and you were like number 1 in the rock charts.
And I was covered in muck. Sticky tape. And I was like, oh. But Brian, he said to me, hug me. And I said, are we sure we're allowed to do this? He said, I've had both jabs, please hug me. So I stood and held Brian May for about 40 seconds, which was one of the loveliest things. And he was...
That's longer than his solos.
But it was so lovely. And I think, I'm hoping that when people have been vaccinated and we realise that it's something we're going to have to live with forever, but that hopefully it won't kill as many people, that we will get back to that we'll get back to holding each other, because that's what human beings do. And the connection, you say, with an audience, or just connection with another person, it will be a massive thing. Can you imagine? Oh my Lord, we were saying this the other day, my husband and I, who's the first person you want to see in concert? Now, my husband is 52 and a white man, but he said, I want to see Stormzy, because I want to be in a room with people going absolutely bonkers and just feeling that excitement of a room full of people enjoying the same.
Well, you could come and see me at the Crazy Cox. It's a bit cheaper and easy to get in.
Can you do some grime artist work as well?
Well, if I don't clean the piano, we'll tick all the boxes. Listen, I think, this is we could go on all night, I know, but I haven't had dinner yet. Have you?
I have.
John?
Darling, I only eat once a day now.
It has been so good to talk to you both. I hope you've enjoyed yourselves as much as I have.
Yeah, it's been great.
And thank you for everybody watching. Bart Jacobs, who's a wonderful fella, and Heather Miller. I'm just looking at some of the comments now. Isn't it amazing? Just this. So we've got Drea Becker, who's in Canada. Irma Nieto, who I know is in California. We've got Bart from Belgium. Who else? Got George from the UK, and Heather and Marion in the UK as well. I mean, it's. I'm always slagging off social media, but there are times like this when it's just amazing, isn't it? How it brings people together from all over the world.
Yeah, amazing, really amazing.
Well, thank you both. let's hope what we should do is have some kind of reunion on stage when all this is finished. We should have a 40-second hug in a public space at least.
Definitely.
In a cage.
With music.
That'd be brilliant.
Lots of love to you both. See you soon.
AJ, so nice to meet you. Gary, adios.